Dr. Lil, and I will be your host today. And I am delighted that there's another opportunity for us to talk about our wellness, our mental health, and even holistic health. As women and even as men, I'm mindful that there are some men who have joined us today. As we start today, I just want to take a moment to ask everybody to mute yourself if you are able to. You should be, just to limit background noise and to give time for our panelists to be able to speak to us comfortably without interruption. We're just going to remind you that we will be recording this session and it will be made available. It will be uploaded on YouTube, and it will also be available on my website, www.lilianudera.com, and also on our Facebook page as well. I'm going to ask you if you would like to invite other people to join us today. You can quickly send them a message and ask them to log in and join us. You can also start a watch party. This is streaming on Facebook, so if you want to have a watch party and have other people participate, that is okay. I want to take a moment today. It's been a difficult week, difficult month, a difficult few months for most of us. And so I want us to take a moment, just a quiet moment for a few seconds, and reflect on just the level of racial violence that we have been experiencing in this country, and think of all the Black and brown bodies that have been victimized and targeted this week. And my heart especially breaks for Jacob Blake, who still remains in the hospital. So I'll just ask us to take a moment. Thank you for taking that moment to just reflect on what this means. These are lives, and I'm mindful that all, if not most of us who are on here today, are men and women of color. And regardless of what country that you are logging in from, you're affected by this in one way or another. We have people in our families. I'm looking at some of you, your husbands, your brothers, your sons, your nephews, your fathers, your workmates, the people in your family, the people in your church, in your network, in your neighborhood, in your fellowship, in your church, in whatever place you gather, that we are affected by this. And now more than ever, there's awareness that there's a need for a voice, social justice voice, to advocate for minoritized populations and to be agents of healing at this time. And like I mentioned earlier this week, those who follow me on social media, this is what I know how to do, to pray and to gather us together to support each other. I don't know what you're carrying and how you're filtering this through. And I'm also mindful that last night we lost a giant, our Wakanda king himself, Chadwick Boseman, who was so young, 43-year-old, and I'm mindful that he was somebody's brother, somebody's son. And there's just so much I could say on this. And as women, as African women, as Black women, there's always a call on us to be the strong women, to keep forging on, to keep carrying it. I don't know about you, but every time I see those news pieces, I don't have the benefit of posing and saying, I'm not gonna go to work today. I'm going to sit home and cry. I'm gonna be afraid of getting out. We all put that on the back burner. You compartmentalize it somewhere, and you get up and you keep moving. But for this next hour, I just want us as women to say, I am strong, I am resilient, but I also can be vulnerable. It's okay to not be okay. I know that's become cliche, but it is okay to not be okay. And it's okay to lean on somebody else, and it's okay to say, I can't today, I can't. Because there's so much, the emotional weight of the last several months, especially the culmination of the pandemic and racial stuff, financial stuff, political tension, all those pieces. I don't know about you, but it's been weighing down on me. So in some selfish ways, I want this for me because I want to draw from all of us. And we have amazing panelists today who are going to share with us and reflect with us some things that are going to be useful in us growing and learning together. And actually, just to give you an idea of who we have today, these are the people I have lined up. I can't seem to get to my slideshow piece here. So this is what we have today. We have for you today Brenda Ngure, who is an amazing person. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her, but she will start us off on a discussion on sexual health and mental health. And then we will have Mosi Kiaria, who's in Texas, is going to talk to us from her personal experience of raising a child on the autism spectrum while maintaining strength. And then, of course, we'll have Julia Sana, who will talk to us about mental health and mindset when life knocks you down. And then I'm going to bookend this, talking to us about self-care. So that's kind of where we are going to go today. Be mindful that I received a lot of questions. We will not be able to get into all of them, but we'll touch on as many of them as we can today. And so we're going to start off with Brenda today, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. Pleasure to invite Brenda. She is an intersectional health promotion professional. She has worked in the field of mental health service for over 15 years, serving at different capacities, especially in executing health programs and providing psychoeducational services. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology from Bridgewater State University in the New England area. She also has received her master's in public health at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And thereafter, she completed her postgraduate work in sexual health and rehabilitation medicine, University of Alberta, Canada. She is very passionate about the intersection of these issues. And so she'll just shed some light on how does mental health connect with sexuality. She lives in Toronto, Canada, where she works in the challenging field of crisis intervention. I'm going to just give a warm welcome and just yield the floor to Brenda to take us on from here. Brenda, you're on.
Hi, everyone. I won't do any introductions again. Dr. Lil, thank you so much for inviting me to this platform, and I'm glad to have be on this platform and to share on mental health and sexual health. Two complicated subjects, and when you put them in one sentence, it becomes more complicated. But it has been my passion, especially when it comes to our African and especially to African women with women's pleasure. But today we'll just put a foundation on how we need to think about this issue. I will not dwell on so much, but let's just put the foundation on it. So I'll just share our platform here. Hold on, sorry. Can people see? Can people see?
Yeah, we can see. Just go to your slideshow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
okay,
we can see.
Yes. So why do we need to think about sexuality in connection to mental health? The biggest part we need to remember, it's part of our anatomy and physiology. I don't know how many of you go to the doctor and you see the structure, the poster about the human anatomy. It's one big body structure. Like you can't divide the head from the toes, the hands. It's one part, a structure. I just want us to get that it's part of us. And sexuality includes, it doesn't, every time I hear people talk about sexuality, they always think about the act of sex. But sexuality includes behaviors, interests, functions, pleasure. Pleasure is a very big issue in our community. We don't even want to talk about it. Relationships, reproduction, something like pregnancy. When you think about pregnancy, you're thinking about the reproductive part of it and the mental health part of it because of depression. The other thing we need to think about sexuality in mental health is about the cultural and historical impact it has on our self-image and the way we carry our own bodies. We also need to remember that some disorders like endometriosis, uterine fibroids, and infertility in women have their own challenges in, they have like some sexual disorders, like pain disorders, some arousal disorders, and they also cause issues like anxiety and depression. When we speak about women, we also need to understand that there's a female hormone that we all have. It's called estrogen, very important. And one thing I want to mention about estrogen, when you're younger, about in your puberty, you have like a stronger estrogen. I don't know how to explain it, but as you're growing older, it decreases. And I just want you to get that part, that it decreases as you're growing older. And some hormones that are very important, I like calling them the happy hormones. We won't get into that because there's a lot of biology, a biological aspect of it. There's serotonin and dopamine, and I'm sure we have mental health professionals here, and they can tell us how important it is if you have stable serotonin and dopamine levels in our body. Those are very vital hormones when it comes to your mental health and even the way for sexual health in terms of sexual pleasure and sexual stability. So I just wanted to touch base because sometimes we feel, oh, why should we even think about some diseases and some issues that we Africans, and not just Africans, even everyone, but I just listed some issues I personally feel that we as a community are struggling with. Diabetes, hypertension, uterine fibroids. I know I mentioned something like endometriosis. We are having a lot of cancer. Alcoholism is becoming an issue in our community. People are starting to depend a lot on alcohol. And unfortunately, if you're a woman who is consuming alcohol, when you are pregnant, there's a possibility of your child getting fetal alcohol disorder. And that child will have a lot of physical challenge, some physical traits that are different, some behavior challenges, and some learning challenges. Sexual trauma, sexual abuse is something that we all like putting under the rag. I don't know how many of you would hear stories about, oh, so-and-so was touched by the ankle, this and this happened, and no one talks about that. Unfortunately, what happens when those things are put under the rug, they come out in different ways. It can come out even as diabetes. I know we don't like thinking about that, but it has a strange way of coming out as you're growing older. Gut health is a big topic that we all need to take care of, because again, remember the serotonin I talked about, part of it is also comes from your tummy. I'm trying to dilute language so that we are all able to understand. And all these disorders I talked about are related to the feel-good hormones, be it diabetes, be it hypertension, whatever it is, there's a feel-good hormone that is associated to them. And what happens sometimes when you don't have that feel-good hormone, you might have anxiety, you might have depression, and it also might be intersect with sexual pleasure. Some people have pain, something like people who have uterine fibroids. One thing you will hear, because I have these discussions with people, they have a lot of pain when they're having sex, but they've never thought that uterine fibroids maybe is the cause. Another thing I see, like with endometriosis and uterine fibroids, because the feel-good hormones have gone down, people are depressed. So I just want us to have an understanding how one disease leads to something else. And I just want to, there's no specific order. You might have uterine fibroids and not get the anxiety. You might have hypertension and not get the sexual dysfunction, but there's always a possibility of getting something somewhere. And that's why it's very important for us to follow with medical professions. Your everyday link of mental health and sexuality. Because I know I mentioned diseases and somebody be like, I don't have those issues. Think about it, life stresses, life issues. Maybe you're going through a breakup, a divorce, a loss, grief. Maybe your child was sent home because you didn't have school fees. Think about how that impacts you as a human being and how you relate to the environment and yourself after that, and even how you give yourself sexually, let's say, for example, in a relationship when you're under all that stress. When I have a love-hate relationship with history and culture because of the societal pressure it puts, especially on women. A great example is how we are expected as women, the cultural expectations, how we're supposed maybe to be in a home, and maybe you don't like cooking, but now there's a pressure of you being a wife who has to cook this gourmet meal. Think about how those things affect your self-esteem, your confidence, how you even relate to your partner. I just gave an example like how do you fit in as a married woman? What are the expectations? And when you think about it, how it's that expectation maybe is just putting you down and drawing you down. Another big thing that is coming up again is because of so many issues, maybe it's biological, environmental, is the infertile women. I had just to put it there because I've had it so many times. And unfortunately, what happens, there's a lot of sexual disorders that come out with infertility and a lot of mental issues. Research has shown that women who have been diagnosed with infertility, there's a great anxiety and depression, a great diagnosis in that community. I just wanted to put it, I know I'm rushing because I also want to give our panelists all the time to talk. And Dr. Lil, if I'm running, just please give me a heads up about time. Sexual orientation, LGBT children. The reason I wanted to put this is because, especially for people who are in the diaspora, I don't know about people back home in Africa, we are having most of our children become part of the LGBTQ community, which is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and queer. And it's becoming a challenge because what is happening, there's a lot of anxiety with that population, there's a lot of depression, and there's a lot of suicide, which is, it's disheartening to see that. And we cannot ignore not talking about that and handling these topics. Another thing I always like saying medication, medication, medication. I don't know how many of us take time to read the side effects on a medication list. I am going to tell you, every time a doctor orders medication, I read that list like a book. Why? Because some of these medications have side effects, and for the context of this forum, some of those medications have mood changes. They decrease your sexual pleasure. You need to understand that and know that. And there are two things I'd like to say about this. Make sure you follow up with your doctor if it's a side effect that you cannot cope up with. I remember one pharmacist was doing a webinar and said, no matter what you do, every medication has a side effect. It's about what you can cope up with. So that's why I like resting medication. Another link to mental health and sexuality is the impact of any disease. And I just want to give each one of us homework. Take your time, go to the website like cdc.gov. Think about a disease of your interest, whatever it is, fibromyalgia, cancer, and see how it is linked to mental health and sexual health. And you will really be challenged to understand some of the disorders that come up from one disease to the next. And sometimes some diseases, I know some treatments some diseases might not have directly linked to mental health or sexual health, but what happens sometimes, depending on treatment, they might link again to mental health and sexual health. But we are just creating awareness today. So just take time, just understand, and always follow up with your doctor. So if you've not remembered anything I have said today, what would I like you to take from this talk? Estrogen is a female hormone. It changes across the lifespan. So as you're growing older, it's growing down. And when it interacts with the feel-good hormones, then that's another challenge. And that's why you find like in menopause, people have mood changes. Understand your own body and be very observant, physically, mentally, sexually. And for a second, I want to challenge each one of us right now. If you could just take a second, look at your hands. I know some of you are looking at them like, oh my God, I need lotion. Maybe my hands are dry. That's a common thing for us to do. But if I say, take a time and look at our private parts, our genitals, how many of us are open to that? I know already there I gave somebody anxiety. I didn't mean to, but I just felt like we need to understand, we also need to be observant in that aspect of our lives. Appreciate and don't be sorry for what you feel and want sexually. And I like stressing that because remember the feel-good hormones I talked about, they are very vital in your mental health and in your sexual pleasure. So you can't win. You have to win both ways. You have to try. Diet and exercise, I know I mentioned there earlier. Remember, the feel-good hormones come from both, and that's why we keep hearing nutritionists, doctors always emphasizing in everything you go, the diet and exercise they're very, very important. Always and always consider having any underlying issues or disorders. You can't, I like saying this, whatever you are doing in life, whatever is happening to you mentally or sexually, always consider if there's any underlying any disorder or a disease, because the doctors have to start from that aspect, the genetic and biological part of it. Sexual trauma, address sexual trauma with a therapist, because again, as I had said, it comes out in different ways as you're growing up. It might come up with different disorders, maybe being afraid of sex, or even other mental health issues. I didn't post it here, but there's something we call adverse childhood experiences, things that you maybe faced, maybe there's something that happened when you were young. And as you're growing older, it comes out in something like hypertension or diabetes. We need to be very aware about how things intersect in our lives. Lastly, I'd like to say, invest in your own health. Invest in information and invest in money. I'm an African. When I hear the word invest, I hear land. And unfortunately, if I am thinking about land, but I'm not taking care of my health, guess what? I'll never, ever enjoy the land if I'm not taking care of my health. And a great example I had this week, I went to the doctor and I needed a test, and she recommended a test that wasn't being covered by insurance. And unfortunately, when I left the office, because she quoted a price of 200 and something, and I was like, I ain't gonna do this. So I left her office. When I got out of the parking lot, I'm like, I should be investing in my health. So it's again, my African mentality, your African mentality, we need to invest in our own health. I think the last thing I wanted to mention is some resources. I mentioned about CDC. Just go there, do some on your own research. I know with COVID, most of us have been on that website. ASACT is American Association Sexual Educators and Counselors Therapy. It's a website, but if you need a sexual health professional, a sex therapist, that's a great website. TeachingSexualHealth.ca, great website for parents for topics for parents who want to discuss sexuality with your children. And remember, throughout my discussion, I also mentioned about the LGBTQ community. So that's a great website. Psychology Today is a great website that you can learn about various topics, be it in mental health, sexual health. The last topic that I just had to put out there, this actually is a scientific study, but that was done by Indiana University and Kinsey Institute. It's about women's sexual pleasure. They did a study of about 20,000 women gave themselves to this study, and they still are giving themselves to this study. The reason I like this website, it's visual. Most of us don't want to speak about our vagina. Sorry, I have to mention it. We don't want to speak about it, but we need to understand how it functions, what it feels, what to touch, where to go. If you're that kind of visual person, I'd encourage you to go to that website. The only downside to that website is that there's a one-time fee, but it's a great learning tool. And again, we have to remember that sexual health, and especially women's sexual pleasure, there's a lot of stigma. So even getting funding for it is a challenge. So I hope I was able to touch base on the basics of understanding the intersections of mental health, sexual health, and again, lifestyle diseases, because these are three things that I like. We have to understand one thing connects to another, but what I want us to get by the end of these discussions about the feel-good hormones, they are very important for you mentally, very important for you sexually. Understand your body, appreciate it, and don't feel less than you. God bless you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Dr. Lil. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Brenda. That was so rich. That was so short and brief and straight to the point. we're talking about balancing strength and vulnerability. And sexuality can make us as women feel very vulnerable, because especially coming from cultures where even verbalizing sexual issues is taboo, and even talking about sex being pleasurable traditionally in African culture, that was a no-no. It was about reproduction. But we're bringing awareness to the idea that your sexuality is important. Your sexual pleasure is important. You're a sexualized being and appreciate it. Talk about your VJJ. It's okay. And when you go to the doctor's office, put it there, especially those of you who are sexually active, whether you want to be able to tell your doctor. Women were the first ones to be like, I'm good, I just have headaches and I have the other. But put it down and say, I've noticed a change. And the doctor can help you track back and figure out, did you change your diet? Are there any new stressors in your life? Did you change your medication? Is there something new going on? And sometimes people come to me and it's a sexual thing, and I'm like, wait, we just need to go back and change your medication and bring back your sexuality back. It may start with talking about your sexuality, even with your partner, with your spouse, and talk about, being able to say, this is what's working, this is not working, or I'm going through XYZ and it's interfering with my ability to function and operate well. So let's put it on the table. I know it's vulnerable. Those of you who have had PAPs or mammograms, it is vulnerable to be on there and somebody else is checking you out. But you can't, I like, Brenda, how you said it. It's useless if I have a piece of land somewhere in Africa, but I am too ashamed or too timid to talk about my sexuality, and it may lead to something more significant that could have been addressed. Brenda is committed to preventive health. And so she could connect you to, even if you're not concerned, you're like, sexually, I'm good, but just go have things checked out. I know we have some medical professionals on here, nurse practitioners, and we can definitely, if you have questions, put them on the chat box, and we may be able to respond to those ones later on. But please, ladies, let us be mindful of our sexual health and how that touches on our mental health as well. So we're going to move on to our next speaker, our next panelist today. This is a phenomenal woman of God. My goodness, I don't know what to say about her. I'm going to put my slide back on there so that you see kind of the trajectory of where we're going. So I'm going to introduce Musi Kiarie. Musi is the president of Coaches of Influence Foundation, an international organization which is committed to helping individuals, groups, nations, and organizations to pursue and achieve their purpose and meet their ultimate goals through positive influence coaching, teaching, and modeling. She also serves on several boards, there's too many to mention today, including Destiny Women Capital, Duchess and Duchess, and the SNAC Educational Services, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to bridge the academic career achievement gap for young minds in STEM. She was recently awarded the 2017 Distinguished Leadership Award as a global influencer by iChange Nations, an organization whose mission is centered on interfaith peace-building initiative and treatment to all humanity to the United Nations. Musi is a recipient of numerous awards. I can't even mention them all, including the 2016 Golden Rule International World Peace Ambassadors Award, the 2016 Women Add Value, a leadership and recognition award by Women Add Value International organization that promotes honor, respect, open dialogue, and harmony, and whose vision is to honor and highlight the value of women by iChange Nations. She holds an MBA from Latino University. She lives in Dallas, Texas with her husband, Eric, and two adorable boys. Musi is a good friend, just like Brenda, and I am so honored that she could come and share some wisdom with us today. Just about her personal journey and some tips she can give us as women about balancing our strength with our ability to be vulnerable as well. Musi, I yield the floor to you.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Dr. Lil, for that wonderful intro, gracious remarks. I am truly honored to be on this platform and be able to share my journey as a mother to a child on the autism spectrum. And I'll say this, ever since you started this webinars on surrounding mental health, I have purposed to log in and hear the speakers that educate, create awareness, and wave this green flag, declaring that mental health is real, y'all, and it needs to be addressed more than ever, especially amongst our people, our African people. Ain't no shame in getting help, people. Brenda, thank you so much for sharing that. It's quite an eye opener, and I do remember the days of postpartum depression. I'm glad you talked about that. I'm glad to be on the same platform with my dear friend Julia. She was my matron of honor during our wedding. So much I've learned from her before, during, and thank you, thank you, thank you. So anyway, I've been there. I've been on that mental train. I don't have any slides to share, so I'm gonna just talk. And so I was diagnosed with clinical depression and prescribed antipsychotic drugs. I swallowed those capsules like my sanity depended on it. Okay, I know that's some intro, but let's just exhale. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm good. For now, I'm good. But Dr. Lil, real quick, you tweeted something on Twitter some time ago that stated, God's reputation is not at stake just because you're in a storm. And oh my goodness, that resonated with me. Everybody in this entire world is wearing a mask at one point or another, right? The pandemic, this is a storm. It's every day's people's storm. It's the same. But not everybody is in the same boat, right? So as a mother with an autistic child, it's not been easy. Even before COVID, it was hard trying to navigate his academic and educational enrichment, and they're already at a disadvantage, just the fact that they are autistic. Because when it comes to resources and services for an individual with a disability, the special education typically accounts for a large and growing share of school budgets, which includes personnel, equipment, training, services, and all that. And then COVID hit. Talk about trying to keep your head above the waters, okay? Some of y'all were in sailboats, in yachts, on board a ship like Titanic. While for us, or rather my household, it felt like we were on a raft, not even a canoe or a kayak. We were on a raft, paddling with wooden oars upstream. Eric on one side, I'm on the other, just paddling against the current, heading to a waterfall. COVID-19 was disruptive, is disruptive in the neurodiverse space. And even some of these interventions have been so difficult to address depending on where the individual is, because when you see one person with autism, you've seen one person with autism. And so these are our most vulnerable population, and there's no playbook that says, hey, this is what you need to do when you shut down a school for a regulated amount of time, an indefinite amount of time, and this is what you need to do, especially for kids on the spectrum during COVID. So how did I maintain my sanity and my strength during this process, right? So backstory real quick. Amani, who is now 14 years old, was diagnosed with autism right before he turned 2 years old. I have an Engage talk on YouTube. Just Google Engage and then my name. And I talk about my story of being a mom to a child on the spectrum. So anyway, I wasn't even prepared for that journey of motherhood or parenting. 12 years later, and through many years of struggles, y'all, challenges, tears, changing schools, attending several meetings in a year, and through the grace of God, I built some resiliency and stamina in me that I thought it was only for the chosen humans, right? And so just a whole lot that resonated during that time. I remember cutting my hair, going natural, twisting, and I have dreadlocks all the way down to almost my behind. And it's just a constant reminder of the challenges, but the strength, the sanity. So I'm going to give you 3 quick points on how I've been able to raise this child on the autism spectrum while maintaining strength, maintaining this face, this made up face for today in this COVID times. And it's going to be easy. We're going to use the acronym CAN, like I can. Yes, we can. I can do this. So CAN. It's going to help you best remember certain steps that brought balance in me, and I hope it brings clarity to my reality. So here goes. First one is C, carpe diem. right? Seize the moment. I remember when I was getting married 17 years ago, my aunt shared this on during our reception, those speeches that we get. And she said, Musi, don't wear your hat too tight. So I was leaning in to listen. What do you mean? And she said, yeah, you're going to be a wife. You're going to be a mom. You're this career corporate girl. Don't wear them too tight to where when you walk from the office into home, you're still this corporate girl. Can't wash dishes, right? Or kids come and hubby's all up in your face. You know, it's that time, bedroom time, sex time, whatever. I'll just call it like it is. And you're, oh, the baby. No, 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 no. Just master and compartmentalize to a point where you don't wear those hats too tight, right? Act that part in that moment. And I remember even being a student at that time. You know, it's work, and then come home and I have Bible study for 7 years at my house every Thursday. Going to school, the kids, hubby. But I remember that. And I remember, don't wear that hat too tight. And years later, I also remembered, oh, I can actually put a bandana underneath my hat. And that bandana doesn't come out because I'm a child of God and I operate under the anointing of a child of God wearing those hats. And so when people talk about work-life balance, for me, I have learned to embrace the term work-life prioritization. That whatever I'm doing right now is priority over everything else. And here's the thing, don't rush away from an experience that can transform your life. So just own that moment, seize that moment, right? A, affinity group. Who's your tribe, right? Do you belong to a group with a shared interest or a common goal? So when COVID-19 hit, and this is because it's recent, there were two major groups that I reached out to besides my husband, besides my mom, who's a strong pillar in my life, my intercessor. I mean, I sought for help and support, prayers, you name it. So there's this WhatsApp group for Kenyan DFW, Dallas, Fort Worth, autism mothers. We're about 51 of us. And we all have children on the autism spectrum. The strength. I mean, we pray together, we vent, we share best practices, milestones, accomplishments. We celebrate birthdays. They are like sounding boards to me. Like when I was thinking about this time, I'm like, okay, COVID really unearthed and uncovered a lot in Amani's educational plan. And I'm like, should I pull him out of therapy and this, that, the other, and just the advice from them. And now he is 40 hours therapy, eight hours a day therapy. Forget ninth grade, forget that. Just pack that in the back. And so they helped me on that journey, my affinity group, my tribe. Then I had my girlfriends. You know who you are, you're on this call. Prayer warriors, ladies who prayed and stood with me, no judge zone. Some of them don't even understand the journey of being an autism mom. But they were there. They let me boo-hoo cry. Oh, affinity. So find your tribe. If you can't find one, create one. And listen. You cannot get help if you don't ask for help. If you're not willing to be vulnerable and seek for help when you're overwhelmed, you have not because you ask not. And we're all human beings. None of us are exempt from being bombarded with trials, adversity, drama, chaos, troubles, problems. The devil doesn't ask for permission to show up with all the drama, he just barges in. Life happens. And the good thing is, don't find yourself pitching a tent there. Oh, woe is me, I'm the only one. No, honey child girl, no. You're not the first, you're not the last to go through these problems. It's a whole host of us. Some of us hid with our facades on until we couldn't keep it any longer, right? Forget spirituality, forget religious folks, forget culture. This is what it is. So find your tribe. Last but not least, right, the N is no. The power of no. So I learned this a few years back, and then I was also reminded about a month ago on this webinar that no is a complete sentence. Somebody type on the chat right now, type in the chat. No is a complete sentence. Just say no to stuff, right? Say no to stuff that will cloud your priorities. You don't owe anybody an explanation. Can I do this? No. That's it. That's it. Have time for yourself. Thank you, Brenda. Have time for yourself. Don't feel guilty about it. It is so liberating. Don't be the yes man or yes woman and feel so overwhelmed making other people's dreams come true. That's what we do. While you give yourself fragments to yourself and to your family. Don't do that. In fact, now that NBA is back, well, for now, there's this move called a spin move. My oldest is here, he plays basketball. And it's where you pivot on one leg and kind of shift the ball from one head to the other, right? And pretty soon you'll have to either pass the ball or take the shot. This is something that one of my mentors told me, Musi, you either pass that opportunity. You don't have to say yes to everything. Pass it to somebody else. They're asking you to speak, and you're overwhelmed, your plate's overwhelmed. No, pass the ball. Or take the shot. Take it. Take an opportunity that will stretch you, will challenge you, will grow you. Grow into that. Make that three-pointer. If you miss, that's okay. Just go practice. Take the shot. So anyway, back to the storm tweet from Dr. Lil. God's reputation is not at stake because you're in a storm. And I'm reminded of this true story about this couple who went on a cruise ship from afar. And it looked like there was a storm that was beginning to brew or to rage. And the lady was having a dialogue with the captain and almost trying to give him some advice. And the captain looked at her politely and said, ma'am, I am the captain of this ship. So please, I don't need advice from you. And number two, this cruise ship was built with that kind of storm in mind. When God had me in mind, when God created me and formed me in my mother's womb, he had money in his mind. And while I was crawling around my mother's feet, he built stamina in me to raise Amani. So this ship called Musi was built and created with Amani in mind. Amani, who happens to be a statistic in somebody's record books because he checks the intersectionality of being Black, being a male, being a person with a disability. But I'm here today talking about mental health. I know it's facts about science that they don't know the cause for autism. They don't have a cure. That's a fact. The truth, I know my God. I'm not preaching, but I'm just saying, I got the platform, y'all. I know my God. A man is fearfully and wonderfully made. He was born nonverbal. For about 5 years, couldn't say anything. But now he talks 100 miles an hour. This ship was built with Amani in mind. So remember that. Carpe diem, seize the moment. Find your tribe. Find people who at least have similar interests with, who will raise you and uphold you and be there, allow you to be you when you have those bad days. And no, just say no. And so switching a little bit here, there's a question that came in. How then do I bring about the balance and strength in my workplace, right? In my career, when I need to speak up and advocate for myself? I'm going to be real quick on this because of time. So I'd ask you, how many of you have regular one-on-one meetings with your boss or manager, right? And if you don't, why not? Don't wait for them to schedule. It's on you. Send a meeting invite to your boss. Just have a cadence, a pattern, a recurring meeting. And in your agenda, address 3 things or 4 important things. What are you working on? Are there any key risk indicators? What are the issues? What are the outcomes? What are the next steps? talk about your accomplishments, right? Since the last time you spoke, a future state, and then just send him a quick email, right? It's on you. So set that meeting on Monday, like pop. But then how do you advocate? I ask for a raise. Three quick things, and I'll leave the floor to Dr. Lil. First off, you have to recognize your value and own that. Like, what is your brand? What do people know you for? What value do you bring to the table when your name is spoken at a round table in a boardroom where the people of power and privilege that make decisions are seated around? What is said about you behind closed doors, right? What's said about you in your absence? So create your brand, and that is on you too. Number two, leverage the power of your profile. Meaning, what are your greatest and powerful attributes? What are your strengths? Are you leveraging that? For example, I have great relationship management. I have passion. I have interpersonal skills. I'm a culture carrier, and I use that to my advantage. What about you, right? Establish some credibility within your network. The third one, negotiate for yourself. So think about it. We always negotiate for others, or rather, maybe a good example, maybe it's always good to pray for others, or rather, it's easier. That's the right word. It's easier for you to pray for others. If somebody asks, do you pray for yourself? Maybe you're humble about it. Now, maybe I'm asking for too much. I'm not going to pray. But do you pray for yourself? Do you negotiate for yourself? Well, Musi, how do I do that? Well, ask for access to senior level meetings, be visible and ask for opportunities and projects. Raise your hand and volunteer, right? By leveraging the power of your profile, let folks see your strength. Ask for opportunities. My eyes are crying, y'all. And I put some eye drop. Right? Ask for those opportunities to job shadow. Let people see your strengths, right? So leverage your power of your profile. Ask your manager, how can I be effective in this project? Look for areas of inefficiencies and provide solutions that will influence decisions and results. And always keep a running document of your accomplishments, right? Don't be afraid of asking feedback from your peers or business partners. So do that. Be intentional about that. Negotiate for yourself. And then also the last thing, what's your worth? For example, the painter, Vincent Willem van Gogh, right? The Dutch painter. His paintings are not worth $20 or $150 or so, it's millions. So when you know your value, what is your worth? Put your resume out there on Google and type the title and see the salary range in your job market. Are you competitive? I mean, you've been at this company for a minute, and folks who graduated 2 years ago are making double digits more than you, right? When was the last time you upskilled your career? Are you still stuck with MS-DOS and Lotus Notes on your resume? What new skills have you learned at the job? Are there any certifications or training you've taken lately on leadership or manager effectiveness? Worked on your transferable skills, right? Those talents and abilities that can be used in many different jobs and career paths. It's very important to upskill on that. Whether it's training, it helps you remain employable. Roles change, you need to keep up with your skills too, right? It helps with your career progression and promotion as you invest in yourself. That's what Brenda said. Invest in yourself. Do that. Put time. We invest in money, nails, hair, makeup, whatever. What about hair? What about your career trajectory? How do you remain competitive in your industry? How do you remain more valuable to your company that provides job security, right? That desire to learn and grow. It just creates a good attitude towards your work for your employer, right? And if your industry is a slump, you've kept ahead of the game by upskilling. So understand your strengths, balance your time well, right? So recognize your value and own your brand, leverage your power of your profile, negotiate for yourself, and know your worth, people. And you can do it. Carpe diem, seize that moment. Be in that space in that moment. Find a tribe. If you can't find one, form one, create one. And then the power of no. Dr. Lil, I'll hand it back to you. Thank you, guys.
Oh, wow, Musi, that is powerful. I have to admit, I was torn on what to ask you to speak on because I know you're positioned well to speak on networking, and we'll definitely have you back to speak on networking at some point to go a little deeper with that. But also, just challenged and so appreciative of you, even being vulnerable here. I think you have modeled vulnerability to all these women that you don't even know all of us personally, but allowing yourself to be vulnerable and opening yourself and your family and your personal experience with us. And there's so much strength in vulnerability. And I can't even echo how powerful what you shared is in impacting even me. I do remember coming to those Bible studies a few times several years ago, and I was just in awe of how you and Eric were still raising this little kid, but having time to open your home every Thursday to young adults from all over Dallas to come and learn the Word of God. You are an inspiration to many, and I thank you for sharing your wisdom and being vulnerable live on screen for us, and also challenging us about taking our spaces. You shared some really powerful things. I probably don't have enough time to echo them again, but women, we always find it vulnerable to ask. And research shows that women don't get promoted a lot because we don't ask. And if we get one no, we say, okay, I guess I'll go back to my desk. Whereas men will bust their door and say no. But so as African women, I think one of the slides I put on, those of you who are here the first 5 minutes or so of the webinar, one of the quotes were by Wangari Maathai that we all know. She said, because I was a woman, I was vulnerable. It was easy to vilify me and project me as a woman who was not following the tradition of a good African woman. Because a good African woman, I think I saw Martha Karua the other day, was asked that she was not fitting the mold. And she said, well, nobody taught me how to be a good African woman. It's okay to bust the walls, to take the limits off, to get into your zone. And you said something, know your worth. And when you know your worth, you will not let somebody else put you in a box. And I know this is not easy for all of us because we are challenging status quo. We're challenging cultural norms. We are challenging cultural traditions about gendered experiences. But you're worth so much more than that little position or that box that somebody else has put you in. Wow, this is so powerful, but I'm excited, but I want to move us on to the next speaker today. Thank you, Musi, for sharing that. Julia is no stranger to our webinars. She's really central to the work that we do here. She's a dual licensed clinician in Florida as a marriage and family therapist, as well as a mental health counselor. So she received her master's degree in counseling psychology from Palm Beach Atlantic University in Florida. She is a court-registered marriage preparation provider in Palm Beach County as well in Florida. She's previously worked in the healthcare industry in various roles, actually in health insurance organizations, providing behavioral health to developmentally delayed children, as a behavior therapist, running groups, as an Alzheimer's certified support group facilitator, crisis life counselor. She does a whole lot. And she also has worked in church settings, doing both faith-based and regular counseling in an urban setting. And she's run a preteen group and moms group. And this is a challenging population. This is no joke when you're working with preteens. They are actually a handful. And I know I can get an amen from those of you who are homeschooling your preteens, for whom you've become a personal assistant these days. Julia has worked in an agency providing therapy for postpartum depression in new moms. So you had Musi mention some of that. Julia, that's her forte. She's in private practice right now, and her expertise is in couples work. She's very committed and dedicated about that, especially premarital counseling. She is busy. She's a pastor's wife. She does a lot of ministry. They have a band, Positively Africa. They have gigs all the time, and they're also raising 4 kids. And she's also a worship minister. So, I mean, I can't say enough about a woman who's mastered the art of multitasking effectively. So I'm going to yield the floor to you, Julia. I know you have some slides to share. You can go ahead and do that as you speak to us. And we're looking forward to the wisdom you'll share.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lil, and thank you so much, Brenda and Musi. Musi had me already starting to cry even before the presentation. And it's a real blessing because these women and panelists today have such a wealth of experience. And what a blessing for you guys on here today too. I've seen a couple of our friends. I know a lot of you are in the corporate world. Some of you are in ministry. and some of you are in the medical field. We've seen a lot of expertise that's presented here. And I just want to give a plug-in. Please make sure you belong to the Promoting African Mental Health group on Facebook, just so you can keep up with what we're doing. And so thank you, Dr. Lil, for introducing me. And today, we've had previous sessions where we talked about specific mental health things, but today our theme is really much about being real. So literally Musi and I did not talk about it. I didn't know what she was going to talk about, so it is incredible. This is how God works. I am also a believer, but a lot of my clients, I would say 99% of the people that I've worked with before have not been people of faith. So we don't discriminate based on your faith in how we work with you. And Dr. Lil has all our contacts if you need to get a hold of us. And for some of the presentations, we have some slides too. So today I wanted to talk about how do you make it through when you're under so much pressure? Because right now with COVID-19, the pandemic, it has upset everything around the world. When was the last time we had something that impacted literally the entire world? Every single place. Either they've shut down or they haven't shut down or they opened up, but jobs are affected, international markets are affected, health, everything you can think about. And then for a lot of us, your jobs have been affected too. Either they've laid off or you've had to work a lot to cover up for other people, or you don't have an income, food is an issue. Then you also have the natural things going on, the floods, the lack of rain or too much rain, or here in Florida, hurricanes, health, whatever it is that's going on. So that's on the outside, right? And then as human beings, we have our own personal storms that are going on because it didn't stop. They didn't look at the pandemic and be like, oh, I'm all solved now that you're in the middle of another thing going on, right? So we also have our personal storms and the things that we were facing before that are still going on. And so my heart was for us as African women on how to handle this pressure. And for a couple of weeks now, I've been working on a presentation about how to do, there's a lot of presentations about contingency planning for a business, but when have we ever thought about planning for ourselves, how to be resilient, how to make it through when there's a hard thing going on? And today that was gonna be my focus, because a lot of people sometimes think that if somebody is considered an expert, that they have it all figured out. No, the pastors don't have it all figured out. The doctors don't have it all figured out. Psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, lawyers, whatever, they don't have it all figured out. There's still portions that we're learning. And of course, there's also the real life thing that we're going through. So even as we speak about this, I'm going through a personal storms, just like you guys are. And so this is born out of personal experience. And so that feeling, I want to talk about that feeling when you feel as if the walls are closing in on you. If you're living in some parts of the world right now, there's so many things going on at the same time, you cannot even focus. You don't have the energy to focus on either of the storms, the drama, the racial tension, whatever else is going on. Dealing with your family, your jobs, kids are home. For a lot of us in the West, the children are starting school remotely. On here, I know that we have people who are coming in, who logged in from at least 4 or 5 countries. I know we have Uganda, we have Kenya. I want to say, I think we had Zambia or Zimbabwe. We have a couple of countries that are presented here on another time zone, and most of you are watching in the evening. And I know, for example, in Kenya, schools are postponed until next year, unless you're doing online or private homeschooling. So that pressure is a lot. So my question to us is, what do you do then when the worst case scenario you thought about happened? But before we get to that, I want to challenge us. What do you do though if also the best case scenario happened? Because sometimes we prepare so much for the bad that we don't know how to prepare for the good, for the opportunity. And I'll give you an example about here in America. A lot of the Black voices here had not been given any credence to talk about their expertise on anything much, or it was always relegated to the back burner, or it was about competing. They could only choose one person to present or represent. But all of a sudden, with what happened this summer, the issues about cultural issues became front and center. And therefore, there are a lot of Black experts who are now required or being asked to give a lot of their expertise and serve in several areas. So in the middle of something that is horrible, God has also provided an opportunity. And so now that people caught flat-footed, not knowing how to use that opportunity. So that's my thing today. Wherever we are as African women around the world, how are we using those opportunities? So what's the best case scenario is when things go the way you want them to. But the worst case scenario is when things go worse. So the fear of it is what gets to us. And I'm gonna pull up my slides and walk us through them. And see how we cope with that. And here we go. All right. So these are my information, and Dr. Lil talked about it. So the worst case scenario is, what is your plan for facing the worst case scenario? Because this is where our deepest fear lies. This is where we create the monsters that are bigger than life. Remember, we've talked about mindset before. So right now, if you guys have a pen, paper, your phone, whatever it is, we're gonna do an experiential exercise. The way that I do therapy, I use cognitive behavior, which means we write, we actually do practical things. So in a span of probably 10 minutes or so, I'm gonna walk you through that so that you feel that you have a grasp and a way of dealing with the worst case scenario that you might be afraid about. So I want you to write about something that's been really stressing you out. And this is where the deepest fear lies, because when you face your fear, all of a sudden the ghosts that lied around it start to disappear, because you're like, oh, I thought this was really the worst, but there's a way around this, because that's what I want to help us with. Right now, the amount of stress and depression we're feeling is because of this deep fear of the monsters that have come up. They were like, I'll never go back to work. Maybe, how is the income? And for a lot of people, especially in Africa, I know that our families have traveled to the up country because it's easier to have your food, you're on the farm. It's easier to be able to figure that out. But what if you're worried about when you get back in the city? How do you keep safe? All those things. I want you to write something down. Whatever it is that you're thinking about, that's what I want you to note it down. All right. So if a job followed you, you're looking for a business loan and you weren't able to get it, you're working on a relationship issue with your family, with your spouse, with your partner, whatever it is, I want you to note it down, right? This is my verse that the Lord had put in my mind. When Moses was stuttering, by the way, Moses had a speech disability. He could not speak clearly and he would stutter. And so he came and told the Lord, I can't even talk, I can't do this, I have nothing, they won't listen to me, they won't believe me. In Exodus 4:2, the Lord asked him a simple question. What is that you have in your hand? What do you have in your hand, ladies? What do you have in your hand, gentlemen who are on here with us? Because we have gotten stuck on this notion that we have to acquire something from the outside to meet the need, meet the moment, meet the famine, meet the fear, meet the worst case scenario. We have that thing that it's something we acquire from outside. Nope. Today I want to talk to us and challenge us. What do you already have in your hand, in you? Because that's what the Lord did. He's already put it in you. It's already in you. Whatever it is that's going to take you out through this season of worst case scenario planning, your personal contingency planning of what's going on. All right. Again, it's not about acquiring something new, because you already have it in you. So here's what I want us to think about. This is an acronym for goal planning, all right? And it's the SMART goal planning technique that I want us to use about thinking about what it is that you have in your hand. So I'm walking you back. Whatever thing you wrote down was your worst case scenario. I want you to think about what is it that you have in your hand that you had not thought about. Are you a great cook? Your friends say you're a great cook. Do people say you're an encourager? You're such a good speaker. You're such a good writer. You're such a good listener. You're such a good planner. You keep such a clean house. You're such a good business mind. You're such a good marketer. You're so stylish. You're so beautiful. You're so slim, or you're so beautifully thick, like we call it here in the US. You're plus size and rocking it, you know? What is it that you had not thought of it as a strength, but it's already in you? That's what I want to encourage you for you to write down, right? Because that's what we're looking at. So now once you have written it down, I want you to look at how you can use it in a specific manner, in a way that you're able to measure it, all right? And after this, by the way, Dr. Lil and the team is gonna send out some of our slides so that you don't have to worry about writing them down. We'll be able to give them to you after the webinar on your email. So is it attainable? Again, we're not thinking about acquiring something far away. We're thinking about what you have right now that you can use right now. Is it relevant to your need? Is it relevant to a need you want to fill? And then time-based, right? How much time do you have to get it, to be able to use it? Remember, we're talking about something that's going on right now, the pressure that we're feeling wherever you are right now, all right? And I'll give you one of my best examples. The first thing that I do, that I did, that we've done a lot of times, is literally stop and pray fast. And I am very aware, like I said, I work with people who are not believers or Christians, and I work with people of the Muslim faith, the Jewish faith, people who are agnostic, atheistic, people who have no faith, people who are new age, whatever they are precious in His sight, and therefore I work with everybody. So when I talk about prayer, I also talk about meditation, because there are people who don't know what prayer is, but they meditate. For me, it's almost the same thing, because it's a moment of quiet, but prayer is actually talking to God about the issue. And this is because it takes the fear away from you and gives you another higher perspective that this is possible. Remember, mindset is about seeing things in a new perspective. What can work? Seeing it in another light before how you saw it. So again, here's this beautiful African woman looking at us. What is it that you have in your hand? Because you are not helpless and you're not hopeless. This is not our regular therapy, mental health thing. This is because of the stuff that we're going through. We were like, today we're just laying it down real to walk through this real fast. So again, using that SMART analogy, you are not helpless or hopeless. And that's what I want us to think about it, right? Here's a good example. You can make and sell meals to others because you're a good cook already, who need them. You can write guest articles on blogs because you have your phone. And for most people around Africa and the diaspora, you at least have internet on your phone. You can literally post, you can do your YouTube videos and post them on there on the phone. If you have a bad connection on a laptop, most people have a phone, and those phones have your internet connection on them. You can create an online course about anything, literally anything, even changing a filter for women. How do you change the tire on your car for women? If that's something that you acquire, you know how to do it, you can do it. My husband tells a story of me changing a fan belt in our old car in Texas using my lady's pantyhose. I just figured out how to use them because I needed to get the car. It had broken down. A girl's gotta do what a girl's gotta do. You know, you have to use what you have in your hand at the time to fix the issue. So ladies and gentlemen, what is it you have in your hand? You're not helpless, you're not hopeless. We're not gonna give into this feeling of feeling trapped and helpless in this situation and season we're in right now, all right? You can teach others how to grow crops. Are you gardening? Because a lot of people are gardening right now. So that's my challenge to us right now. What is it that you have in your hand? Because the thing is, you're going to use what you already have. As you begin to use what you already have, you will acquire a new skill literally without trying it, and your mindset will change towards meeting your current need. Because once you realize you're not helpless and hopeless, and that pressure that's coming at you, you realize there's a way out based on how you turn around and look at it, then you use what you already have in your hand. Then all of a sudden, as you're like, oh, I'm gonna cook a meal for friends and maybe sell to friends who can't cook because they're working so hard, all of a sudden you discover, oh, I can call a few people and, you know, make money off of a delivery service. So you begin to acquire new skills and see new opportunities. Let me tell you guys, the pandemic can be an opportunity to serve others and for God to open a new door so that you're not stuck in that fear of famine, of worst case scenario monsters in our mind, okay? And that's what I wanted to talk to us today. So the last thing I want to share with us is find small and big ways to cater to you. Cater to the girl inside you. And I want us to think about your eyes, ears, nose, our sense, 5 senses, what we see, look at something that's pleasurable for you, that gives you joy outside in nature, things that you're touching, whatever you enjoy doing. If you enjoy cooking, for a lot of us, maybe it's cooking, maybe it's cleaning, maybe it's building things with your hands, because we have a couple of women who are engineers here. So whatever it is that you love doing, find a way to cater to that little girl in you. The quiet tea in the afternoon, reading a favorite book, girls' time out with your friends, like Musi said about your tribe, so that way you're finding a moment to breathe. You're finding a moment to breathe, and the pressure is not getting inside you. The pressure is around you, but the goal is to get that pressure outside of your body and make you realize that you are fully capable of handling this moment, not by yourself with the tribe and with God, but you're fully capable and you're not helpless. Go forth and conquer. Remember, what do you have in your hand? All right. And my contact information is on there. So thank you so much for giving me this chance to talk. And that's my encouragement for us today from personal experience right now. I'm not ready to just give in and curl up and die and cry and be like, what do I do? No, I'm looking at what is in my hand and how can I use it, because the Lord asks you and asks me, what do we have in our hand? Thank you so much.
Oh, Julia, thank you. That was so powerful. I felt like I was in group therapy today because that was just so enriching. Um, creativity is always birthed out of feeling boxed in because you look on the inside, and she literally gave you a glimpse of what we do in therapy sometimes. Is when you come to us, those of you who are mental health professionals, most of the time you ask us, what do I do? And most of the time we'll ask you, what do you have? Where are you? What's going on with you that we can use that? We never have a closet of things we pull and give to you, because therapy is not like high school guidance counseling where we give you things. Actually, we actually challenge you to sit back and reflect and unpack what's going on with you and use that. Even if it's been, Brenda talked earlier about trauma, even talking to a trauma therapist, they usually don't have a solution they can't undo what happened to you. We all have a story, and we cannot say, let's start over and trade that story. What we do is we say, let's work with your story. Can we rewrite this? Can we rephrase this? Can we use this as a stepping stone to move you to a better place instead of a slide for you to go farther down? And again, going back to the slides I have in the beginning, I did not talk to these ladies when I was preparing those slides, but one of the ones I had there was by Michelle Obama. And she says, there is power in allowing yourself to be known and be heard, in owning your own unique story, and using your own authentic voice. And if you've read her book about becoming, that's powerful, because she owns her story, and each one of us here has a narrative. You have your own unique story. Don't let it be put in a box and say it can't happen because of this. I don't think I've ever had a patient or a client sit in front of me that I said, this one, you're beyond, you're hopeless and helpless. Everybody always has something. Everybody has something in their hand we can use. And as women, sometimes you're told you don't have anything, because there are messages we've received over time that maybe have said, you can't because nobody ever has done this. And for me, that's usually a green light to say, girl, go for it. When they say I can't do it, I'm like, watch me, watch this space. I like being the underdog, but because then you get creative. And those of you who know me, I always say, don't give me something I can handle. Give me something I'm going to need divine grace to get through. And I put myself in a situation like that about 6 months ago when I took a new job. And I was like, this is not the right time to be in a new job, a pandemic and all that. But here I am 6 months later. I have grown, I'm thriving. I have been vulnerable. I'll own that. I've been vulnerable. I've cried a lot of tears. But here I am today reminding us, you can be strong, but you can be vulnerable as well. And these stories are beyond powerful. I just want to share a couple of tips for us. I just want to highlight self-care for a minute, because I want to say, like, most of the questions, half of the questions that most of you submitted touched on, how do I engage in self-care as a woman? Because I have this and I have that, I'm the queen of multitasking. So how do I even, and one of the things that was asked was, how do I do self-care without feeling guilty? And so I'm going to just touch on a couple of things, and then we're going to land this plane. I will share my screen. so that I can go through some of these slides. Let's see if we can do that from the beginning. All right, hopefully you can see that. And so the first slide I have there says, this is what people don't see. We are all familiar with the iceberg analogy. Most of the time, people just see your success. They just see how you can hold the fort down. They see how you're this professional woman running a home, you know, taking care of your family, your house is clean, there's food in the house, the kids' hairs have been braided, and everybody's clean, and everybody has their lunch packed, and you're still working. Everybody's in their own room with their Zoom gadget doing their thing. That's what people see. What they don't see is what I have down there. You're meeting all your targets, you're trying to stay healthy, you're making a lot of sacrifices, there's a lot of tears, you know, and come on, women, let's get real. We cry a lot. Some of you cry in your bathroom when it's just you, and you keep it away from everybody else. Nobody accounts for how much the emotional toll it takes on you to have what's at the top of the iceberg. Nobody's cheering you for your good habits of making sure dinner is ready or breakfast is ready before everybody runs out to their destinations. Nobody remembers that you have to keep up with the dates of the birthdays and the PTA meeting and the doctor's appointment. This one has a dentist appointment. This one has ballet. This one has that. And you keep it together. Nobody sees the disappointment that you face when you don't miss those targets, even though you're juggling 37 different things and holding it together. Am I speaking to somebody in here? You know, and somehow you find a way to keep fit. You know, this morning I was out walking very early with one of my workmates who also lives in my neighborhood, and we were talking about the quiet of Saturday morning when she could leave her family in bed so we could go walking and exercise a little bit. Nobody is seeing that. They just see the success, and woe unto you if you drop the ball at the beginning there, because they're on top of you. And so this is what people see. And I know some of you logged in saying, man, people don't see me. They don't even recognize me. I'm just mommy. You know, every time your family comes, they're like, mommy, can I? You know, or mama so-and-so, can I? And you're thinking, wait, nobody's asking about me. They're just asking for me to deliver. And that's what it might look like for some of us in our respective places. Where does that get us? Here, where we are not taking care of ourselves. You know, we do this in a way that after you've done all those things at the, you know, at the bottom of the iceberg, this is you. But you remember to plug your phone in. Don't let this happen to you, because you're not going to let it happen to your phone. Self-care has to become a priority, not a luxury. But most of us women, it's almost like it's a trophy. You know, I did it all and I'm still standing, and who needs, you know, to be able to do anything more? And so let's talk a little bit as African women and self-care, how the intersection of some of the issues that come up for us, because one of the barriers to practicing self-care for women is guilt. And a lot of you asked about that, guilt and self-care, because we tend to feel guilty for tending to our own needs because you're so busy taking care of everybody else. And especially we come from this collectivist African culture where there's a sense of sacrificing for the greater good of the whole family, of the whole clan, of the whole village. So you're always just going, and such that, you know, we are surrounded by this overt and this covert messages that encourage us to minimize our own needs and feel guilty when we engage in self-care. So today we are challenging that, you know, because there's that belief that taking care of yourself will mean that there's less time and there's less energy for everybody else. So there's such guilt for even doing the basic things, you know, that we could do, like eating. You know, think of how many times a day you see some kind of a reference to a woman indulging, or you're splurging or sinning because you meet a basic need, like sitting down to just enjoy or taking time to relax, or say, I'm watching Grey's Anatomy, I'm watching whatever it is you like watching. And there's such almost like guilt because you're supposed to be taking care of others. Today, as you've heard the panelists talk about this, we are challenging that, because this belief that taking care of yourself, you're taking away from others, is a perception that I know you're super women, and I applaud you women. You are amazing, but it also depletes us so much that we look like that battery I showed there. However, self-care is other care. In other words, practicing self-care helps us to even be able to help other people more effectively. I'll just go quick. So what do you do when guilt rears its head? When guilt keeps popping up for you? I want to challenge you to think of self-care as taking action, as being centered and being grounded. Think about it's the way, you plug your Tesla, if, some of you who may have those, to charge and to kind of rejuvenate. It's taking action to ease the tension and the stress from your own system. Your groundedness will keep you steady, because when you put others before yourself consistently, you get to a point where you have nothing. And you will know it, because when your campus is leading you off course. When you're snapping at everybody. When you call your kids, you can't figure out which one you're calling. And then finally you say, anybody, just show up. And that takes away from the individuality of your connection with the child that you're calling, or the person that you're calling. And that's usually a flag saying that, hey, self-care, because we are not easily, when you're grounded, you will not be blown away by the gusts of other people's opinions. Those of you who know me know one of my favorite mantras is, I am not the product of the opinion of man. People can talk all day. When I was 20, it mattered. I was like, what are they going to say? What are they going to do? My self-care is, I don't care. You do you, I'll do me. But that it took time, I will be honest with you, to allow myself to be vulnerable, to say, this is what my story is. I'm owning it. And if you don't like it, too bad. That is part of your self-care. And so I'm just challenging you with just a couple of points. Think of self-care. When you feel guilty about self-care, I want you to think of self-care as a finite resource. Because I think of self-care as money in the bank. You can't give more than you have without bankrupting yourself. If you forget anything I say about self-care, think about it as money in a bank. You can't give more than you have without bankrupting yourself. You're not going to withdraw from a place you did not make a deposit. However, unlike money, you cannot get things on loan, because there is only one unique source for you. And if you saw me post a self-care piece the other day, I said, you can't trade in the way you trade in your phone for the newest, iPhone. You can't do that with this body, with this system. So ladies, let's try and take care of this better. You also can't invest in your money in making more money if you give it all away. So let's just think, I love analogies. You can't eat the seed because we need a harvest next season. So just sometimes saying no, like we were told earlier, sometimes just say no. No is part of self-care. I can't emphasize that enough. If you have eaten the seed, we're willing to rejuvenate you and give you fresh seed. Because when you've eaten all the seed, the whole family will not only be angry at you, they will be hungry. So watch out about your commitment to conservation and renewal of your own supply. You being on this webinar today is your commitment to self-care. And I applaud you women for showing up today and saying, this moment right here is mine. I'm sure some of you have told the kids, watch TV, do something. This hour here is my hour. And I applaud you, because that's you taking care of yourself. Think of self-care as a way to avoid becoming resentful. When I thought about this, it kind of, first I was like, yeah, as becoming resentful, because when you're tempted to do or give too much because of guilt or because of obligation, you become resentful. Think of what it feels like to be on the receiving end of a resentful giver. Because some of you are like, there they go again. They want this, they want that. It's my role. I have to take care of them. Who takes care of me? You can become very resentful. You can start snapping at people. Because if somebody generously helps you out and then reminds you of it with a loud, oh, well, I guess I better get on it, and indirect comments about how they've sacrificed, sometimes we get like that. Let's be real. We get like that where you're thinking, I guess I better get up and make dinner. Sometimes people will pick up on that. If they're insightful, your kids, your spouse, your family, whoever, they'll pick up on it. And you can become really resentful about your role. Or when you overdo, you overgive, your exhaustion. can lead to those bitter sentiments. I don't know who I'm talking to today who's felt that before. I know I have, when I've been like, do I really have to? Where the obligation begins draining me, and I'm thinking, when was the last time I did anything related to self-care? Self-care actually turns out to be a powerful way to care for others. And one of the most loving things you can do for your family, your friends, your colleagues is take care of yourself. That kind of care will nurture both you and them. Let me wrap this up so we can begin to close this. The other one, before I actually go to this slide on self-care, that I wanted to also mention, let me see if I can remember it. Self-care is also, think about it as essential. I may have it on a slide coming up, and non-negotiable. It's one of those things that you want to be able to, let me see if it's on a slide here. I thought I had it. It's a way to keep the doctor away, but the one thing I wanted to mention earlier was it's non-negotiable. Self-care is not pampering. Sometimes it is, but it's not pampering. But the core of it's not pampering. It's, when you confound the two, we make self-care into an indulgence or a someday activity. One day I'll go to the Bahamas. One day, you will postpone self-care if you think about it as this complex, sophisticated thing. Whereas self-care can be, like we'll go into the next slide, can be anything from getting enough sleep, being honest with yourself, saying no, building boundaries. It doesn't have to be expensive, time consuming. It can be about just sitting outside, on your porch and telling the kids, give mommy 5. I just need to breathe in the fragrances out here. Julia talked about appealing to all your senses. Sometimes it's just that cup of chai that you're sitting with out there and saying, give me 5. This is mommy's self-care time. Or it's saying, can I just watch one show, 45 minutes on TiVo, and that's it. That is self-care, because then you can do it continuously. It doesn't have to be postponed and saying, my self-care will happen when I go to Kenya. I saw somebody have a t-shirt like that. And I was like, so given that we're in COVID season, your self-care is going to be postponed until your trip. Get creative with the day-to-day in taking care of yourself. That's a challenge I want to put out there. And finally, there are different types of self-care. You find the thing that works for you. The panelists have touched on some of this, like spiritually, whether it's prayer, whether it's finding your sacred place and devotions early, whether it's getting on social media, or for some of us, getting off of social media, whether it's getting on Zoom with your family across the world, or saying, I'm going to take some time away from my family for a couple of days. It's your call. It depends on how things are happening there. It's saying, I need some personal space, or say my self-care is, I need connection. So it's very personal. I wouldn't say self-care, there's a special list that I could give you. It's about you figuring out, I need to find a new hobby, or saying, I've stretched myself with 20 different things, I need to cut them down. It's so relative. It's time management. It's saying no to your boss. Or sometimes self-care is saying, telling your boss, this is what I need for me to be able to do this job. I'll send you these slides. I'm not going to go into everything that's in here, but find your own way. It can keep the doctor away. When you feel guilty next time about self-care, think about it as a way to keep the doctor away. Brenda is very passionate about preventive care. So she will load you up with things about preventive health, health promotion, healthy habits, so that we all know it's more expensive to go to the doctor's office or go to the emergency room than you getting up 2-3 times a week and walking for 30 minutes, right? It's cheaper to do that than wait until everything in your system is falling apart. Then you have to invest in now taking care of that. I think all the panelists have talked about invest in yourself, not just in property or whatever it may be. It's an opportunity to learn what makes you function optimally. It can be quite an adventure. I'm sure you've all found some creative ways during COVID to help you with your functioning. I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot about myself, what makes me happy, what makes me operate well. So I'm gonna stop there. The one thing I also wanted to mention before I get out of these slides, is some of you asked a lot about depression. And what I'm going to mention is sometimes we struggle with depression because there's so much expectation. Whether it's from the outside, it's from the inside. that I'm going to, if I become vulnerable and say, this is not working, that is not working, I can't do this for you, we feel like we are inadequate. We feel like we're not rising up to the occasion. But we are human. Ladies, we are human, and this life is not a rehearsal. So sometimes self-care is saying no, because I have people come to me and they're dealing with depression, self-esteem, insecurity, the helplessness and hopelessness I talked about. And then I'm thinking, you're putting a lot of expectation on yourself. You only get 24 hours a day. How about you take a step back and think about, what can I cross off the list? You know, one of my mentors in grad school used to tell me, Lillian, you will never get all the laundry done because the clothes on your back will never get washed. Amen, somebody. Where are the ladies? The clothes can be in the hamper, but you can put your feet up and say, give me a cup of coffee. There can be dishes in the sink, and it's okay sometimes to not have, I know there are some of us OCD people on here, that you're not going to put your butt on the chair until the garden is clean and the kids are clean and the laundry is folded. Those people don't exist. Now, this week we talked with one of my friends, and one of the things that we agreed she would do, that actually was her idea, I will not own the idea, was maybe I should pay somebody to come and clean my house. And if the resources are there to do that, I actually say do it. Don't feel like I'll be less than because I can't do it myself. It actually commended her and said, this is self-care for you to be able to say, we'll pay for somebody once a month or every 2 weeks, come clean up our house so that I can have time either with my family or I can do something else. If you can afford it, I would say it. Same thing with cooking. I've had some people say, there's a mama in Dallas who makes chapos. Musi can say, I am not cooking chapos. I'm going to that mama to buy the chapos so that I can actually enjoy dinner with my family, instead of thinking like, my family is not eating my chapos, therefore I'm not adequate. Self-care is saying, I can't braid the kids' hair. You know what? We're going to Mama so-and-so. She will shuka your hairs because I don't have the time. I don't know. You find your thing that helps you take care of yourself. I'm going to stop there. And I know we've gone over time, but I'm hoping people have benefited from this. And we have actually folded answers to the questions that you all asked, not all of them, but I would say at least 50% of the questions you asked, we folded them in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my panelists a minute or two each to give some closing comments. I'm going to start with Brenda. You can do some closing comments and then I'll come back and wrap it up. You can go and then Musi can go, Julia, and then I'll wrap it up.
I think you ladies have just done a phenomenal job. Thank you, Lillian. Self-care, self-care, self-care. I cannot emphasize that. I'm a single woman. I live by myself. Very proud of that. And I always tell people no. And people wonder, you still have a whole weekend to yourself and you live by yourself. I need to do that for my own mental health, my own sexual health, and my own preventative health. I think there was a question there asked about, somebody was asking about gut health and pureed food. I'll just summarize it this way. My assumption is that person is eating pureed food because the doctor has ordered it for a reason. So you need to go back to the doctor and understand if the food is strengthening the gut health. I know you're concerned about the feel-good hormones we talked about, but I think that's why you need to start to go back to the doctor. Thank you, Musi, and thanks, Julia, and thanks, Lillian. God bless.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, ladies. Thank you for everybody that joined. It's always, when I share my story, I always, just because I've shared it, sometimes I feel, oh, I've said this before, that's fine. And just allowing myself to park and pitch that tent there about Amani was more than what I bargained for. But hey, that's part of being vulnerable and just that closure, whatever it is that we go through, talk about it with somebody. Find somebody to talk about that. And it helps you in the healing process. It helps you in just like somebody is unloading your backpack off. Sometimes you can't do that. Just find that person. And I can say, you know, just having family. I've seen my cousins on here, Mbula and Mora, thank you. good friends, Dr. Margaret, Rispa was on here. I mean, just a tribe of people. And one thing I can say from being who I am, I have never stopped praying, not just for my family, for my immediate family, but for the type of mother that I need to be for Amani, because I don't know what it means to be autistic. This racial times, we don't know what it means to be white. White folks don't know what it means to be black. There are resources you can read, but I just pray for that grace to understand this boy's journey, so I can be able to provide to him in whichever way, so he can thrive being a black male in this country with a hidden disability. So thank you for your time, Dr. Lil. It was so good to see y'all, Julia. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. What an honor to be able to share with everybody today. And thank you so much, everyone, for the comments, the suggestions, the help. My only closing thing to say is self-care, let's not ask for permission, because in our culture, it can look as if it's selfish. And if you're a person of faith, it can seem ungodly or selfish or self-indulgent, but self-care is life-saving. It really is. So that's what I wanted to encourage us, and to also say you don't have to do it all at the same time. I know all the titles we have and roles we have, I do not do mine all at the same time. It's in seasons and it's in times, and it's okay to just take that break. The other thing I wanted to make sure that I highlight is the fact that if you need a therapist or a counselor, Dr. Lil and the team also have the list of people that we have that are around the world, and we can figure out in your country, wherever you are, how to get you some help. Again, the theme, my theme being, you're not hopeless, you're not helpless, and what do you have in your hand? That's how I'm living right now. What do I have in my hand?
Wow, thank you so much. Wow, my cup is full. I feel like I've been enriched, I've been empowered by all of you ladies. I want to appreciate the panelists. Brenda, Musi, Julia, thank you for being here and just lending your wisdom to the village for us to learn and grow together. I want to thank everybody for being here. I just want to share a couple of resources for us to know where we can find help. Let me see. So these are our next coming meetings. I just wanted to save the date that for the Promoting African Mental Health, which is like today's, we always meet on the last Saturday of the month at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So our next meeting is on the 26th. You can just pencil in that into your calendar. We'll be here same time again, and we'll have some fantastic topic to speak on and to address on and to help each other, build each other. And for those of you who are providers and your mental health providers, you don't have to be licensed. You can be a grad student, you can be practicing, you can be a minister, but you're doing some level of mental health services. We invite you to join us. This has become really a highlight of our month. On every second Saturday of the month, we just come together as providers, we sharpen each other, encourage each other, network together. And this is a place where we draw resources when everybody else is looking for a therapist, a provider, sexual therapist, or whatever. I go back to the providers and say, do you guys know anybody? And we have 2 Facebook pages. You can follow us. I think I have those resources on the next page. Promoting African Mental Health, you can search for us on Facebook and the network of African mental health providers, and we'll be able to communicate with you. Those are just my personal contact information for my Instagram, my Twitter, and my website and my email. You asked a lot of questions, and where you're going to get those responses really is going to be probably on our Facebook page. I don't ignore any of the questions. What happens is we are going to make effort to respond to those questions on social media or in other ways. You're going to receive an email from me just to give you resources of some of the things we've talked about today. This session is being recorded. We will load it up on my YouTube page, and then we'll share the link on Facebook, and I'll also share it with you on email. I would just say, take care of yourselves. My takeaway today is invest in yourself. because within you there is more than you actually thought there was. You know, one thing that stood out for me earlier when Brenda was talking was, as we all know, a lot of women of color, especially Black women, deal with fibroids. And that is a huge factor that most of us don't even notice until it's too late. And it has a huge impact on your mental health. So if you don't have a provider who can check you to make sure that that is not an issue, there's a heavy loading on Black women, whether we are African, African American. This is very, very common. So as far as your sexual health, your reproductive health, I would say please get that checked out, as well as other medical issues, cardiovascular issues, hypertension. That is much more higher among us, especially with all these multiple stressors we're dealing with. Otherwise, I want to appreciate everybody for showing up. Thank you for logging on, and we look forward to seeing you again next month on our PAM webinar. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of the weekend.